Colombia is the most violent nation in the Western Hemisphere. While guerrilla warfare batters the Colombian countryside, political violence and organized crime menace the cities. In this climate of fear and lawlessness, the production of cocaine and heroin has expanded in Colombia, threatening to flood the United States with dangerous drugs. In October 1999, Republicans in the United States Senate introduced an emergency aid package for Colombia. The vast majority of the aid would provide weapons, equipment, and other support to Colombia's police and military forces. Advocates of the plan say that only by aiding the Colombian armed forces can we hope to bring order to the country and stem the flow of illegal drugs. Critics worry that a new infusion of American weapons will only fan the fires of violence. This week, America's Defense Monitor looks at Colombia's crisis and America's controversial rescue plan.
America's Defense Monitor, television for changing times.
Colombia is one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America. The country lies on 440,000 square miles of some of the world's most fertile land and is a major producer of oil, emeralds, and coffee. Colombian culture is a vibrant mixture of European, African, and Native American people and traditions.
Colombia is a beautiful country. It's got beautiful people. It's such a big country, and it's such an important country, and it has so many resources that are essential for the economic well-being of the Western Hemisphere.
Congressman Sam Farr of California served in the Peace Corps in Colombia in the mid-1960s.
It's one of the largest countries in Latin America. It's as large as Texas and California put together. It's 40 million people. It's the most biodiverse country in the Americas. It has more resources and more microclimates for growing crops than any other country we know of.
But despite the country's natural wealth and economic potential, millions of Colombia's people live in poverty, isolation, and fear. Colombians in rural areas are caught in the crossfire of a brutal and seemingly endless civil war. Refugees from the war have swelled the cities, where political violence and organized crime are daily realities.
Colombia is in an economic depression. Colombia has a serious problem internally with different factions in the country, political factions, warring factions.
The roots of Colombia's current miseries can be traced back 50 years to a period known in Colombian history as La Violencia, the violence. In 1949, civil war erupted between Colombia's two major political parties. In all, 200,000 Colombians were killed in the violence, and 1 million others were forced from their homes. When the war ended in 1972, political elites took over much of the agricultural land vacated by fleeing peasants. Thousands of displaced campesinos, forced to fend for themselves, joined the ranks of leftist guerrilla armies. When wealthy landowners faced a popular uprising, the Colombian military stepped in to protect them. Those whom the government could not protect were allowed to form private armies. These paramilitaries, as they are now known, have become Colombia's death squads.
The private landowners form their own militia, the paramilitaries. The paramilitaries don't operate under any provision of law. They're not accountable to anyone. They create incredible atrocities that go unaccounted for.
Political violence continued as La Violencia gave way to La Guerra Sucia, the dirty war. Colombian security forces and their paramilitary allies became infamous for deadly attacks on unarmed civilians suspected of supporting the guerrillas. In the mid-1980s, armed rebels joined with political dissidents to form a political party, the Patriotic Union. The party rose to power in many of Colombia's poor areas. The army and the paramilitaries swiftly reacted by killing more than 1,500 Patriotic Union activists, including nearly all of the party's elected officials. The guerrillas countered with a campaign of assassinations, kidnappings, and sabotage against both civilian and military targets. In the last decade, 35,000 people have died in the armed conflict. The vast majority of the victims have been civilians.
Las Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia son asesinos. Yo doy ese testimonio. Los paramilitares son asesinos. Y hay una parte del ejército también que son asesinos. Yo doy ese testimonio.
Eulalia Yagari is an indigenous rights activist from the coffee-growing region of Antioquia. While Antioquia's 16,000 indigenous people have refused to align themselves with any of the armed factions, they have been victimized by all of them.
Allí los indígenas han sido víctimas de la guerra totalmente. Allí, por ejemplo, la guerrilla, las Farc nos han asesinado a nosotros un total de 22 personas. Los grupos de autodefensas denominados paramilitares nos han asesinado 18 dirigentes indígenas, entre ellos cabildos, autoridades tradicionales, espirituales, y nos han desaparecido a 6 compañeros indígenas. El ejército ha violado a mujeres indígenas, incluyendo una mujer embarazada, una hembra buena de 6 meses de embarazo. También nos han asesinado.
You live in fear. If you have money, you live in fear you're going to be kidnapped. If you don't have money, you'll just be feared that you may be thought of being aligned with the wrong politics. Nobody wants to live in an environment like that.